What is up, everybody? It's your man James Johnson back with yet another episode of Gridiron Season. I know it's been a while, but you know, me and Nick have been busy. Speaking of which, I am James Johnson, as I said, joined by Nick Trist as usual. Nick, what's going on, man?
James, not too much, man. What's going on with you? You were right, man. It has definitely, absolutely been way too long. And, of course, we do apologize for that, man. But, like you said, life happens sometimes, right?
Oh, yeah, man. Life hits you hard between college and work, man. But nonetheless, we're back at it. We found some way to make the time to get back intact with the fans. I know it's been a lot of people visiting the site, trying to visit the site that is sportsgrinddaily.com. All right, so Nick Trist, IES, as it's always been, and a variety of topics that we have coming up here. Oh, yes, can't forget that, Sports G Daily. At Sports G Daily, should I say. Feel free to go ahead and follow us. We're trying to get our followers up on that account. We tweet out our links to, articles, podcasts, and what have you. Shout outs to Paris and Cree as well with the OTR podcast, our WWE podcast. We post out a lot of their stuff, as well as Flying Brian MMA opinions and news. So, be in tune.
Yeah, for sure. I'm from the Sports Grind Daily, Twitter feed. Talked to Brian a little bit today about that upcoming UFC 182 John Jones versus Daniel Cormier big fight. Should do crazy pay-per-view numbers. So he said in his next episode he'll definitely be breaking that fight down, as well as the rest of the card. So everybody for sure needs to be on the lookout for that.
Right. Good stuff. As Brian always brings us quality MMA match card information and whatnot on his show. Very glad that he could be a part of the Sports Grind Daily family. So as I was saying, the Saints and Falcons game came up. We're going to talk about that. Going to talk on the Jay Cutler situation with the Bears as well in terms of NFL. And then we're going to talk a little bit on college. We're going to talk on some bowl games, even though some of the bowl games have been played. Me and Nick want to give out some bowl games that we think will be interesting and do some college playoff predictions as well. So without further ado, we'll just get right into that. As the Falcons, as I was saying, they beat the New Orleans Saints at 14-30. The Falcons are now 6-9. The Saints are as well, but they are now eliminated from the playoff rankings I guess the defeat to the Falcons knocked them out of contention.
Yeah, that's the second time they lost to the Falcons this year. So
right.
Falcons swept them for the season, and that's the first tiebreaker in the division. And then the second one, I believe is your divisional record, and the Falcons are they're 7-0 or 5-0 in the division thus far. So they'll look to close out the year perfect in division. Against the Panthers in Week 17.
Yep, that will be correct. The Falcons are 5-0. Surprisingly, as you know, that accounts for most of their wins, which have come all in their division and an extra one.
All but one of them.
Right. Which one would that be? Because I don't know, Nick.
I'm trying to recall off the top of my head. No, they got beat by Minnesota. I want to say it was it? I don't know. I'll look it up. We'll get back to that.
All right. Yeah.
Go ahead with what you were saying then, man.
We'll get back to that. And as the Falcons, they will head into Carolina. I think it's in Carolina, if I'm not mistaken, to face the Panthers to decide the winner of the NFC South. So it's a big game with big implications. So real quick, some stats that I looked up. Matt Ryan, 30 for 40. 322 yards and a touchdown. Devontae Freeman didn't really have a lot of rushing yards, 36 yards, and most importantly, he had that touchdown in the third quarter. Julio Jones, now he did well in his return as he came back from his hip injury, 7 catches for 107 in yards, and he was a big factor in the game. Now on the Saints side of things, Drew Brees, 30 of 47, only 1 touchdown, and Colston led the way in receiving, which their offense was a bit lackluster, but he did have 6 catches for 80 yards. So real quick, Nick, I want to know your thoughts on this game, as I missed it, but I did see the highlights and I looked up the stats and whatnot.
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, it's definitely a game I was really happy to be able to catch. And just getting back to what we had touched on earlier, it was actually the Cardinals was the one win outside of the division for Falcons. That came a couple weeks back. that's a pretty good team.
Very good
They
team.
blew some opportunities. The division really wouldn't even be on the line this week had they closed out a lead they had against the Lions late in the game and against the Browns. One was being a home game against the Browns. You really hate to see that one slip away, where you had a lead with less than 2 minutes left. And then, the Lions came back and scored 10 points, and I think it was 3 minutes in the game out there in London. So definitely the Falcons let get away from them outside of the conference. But, man, I guess it's my thoughts on the game. That's really where it starts. The Falcons somehow, some way have managed to be right here. All their goals still in front of them, can still win the division, can still host a playoff game. As crazy as that may sound, being 3 games under 500 currently. But, they've been successful, haven't lost a division game, took care of business. The one game I got to catch this year was the Thursday night beatdown of the Bucs where they, hung 52 points on them. I got to tell you, this weekend was, as a Falcons fan, super surprising for me, but in a good way. I didn't think they had a shot, really. You expect Drew Brees and company, Sean Payton, to get it done, but they just haven't been able to get that going this year. You don't know if maybe it's just an off year or maybe it's time to start thinking rebuild out in New Orleans with some of their, key players getting a little bit older. You touched on a little bit, man. I think the difference was Julio Jones coming back. He's a monster. He's one of the few guys in the NFL who I don't think it matter what corner lines up against him on Sundays. No one can hang with him one-on-one. He's the guy you definitely have to double team and account for. And Roddy White's a seasoned vet who always catches 100 balls. So, Matt Ryan has got some good targets around him.
Mm-hmm.
They've really carried the Falcons to all their wins this year. They made the plays when they had to. And their defense, much maligned Falcons defense, I think under-talented, except for, you got to give credit where it's due to that secondary, especially Trufant. He's established himself as one of, the better young talents of the cornerback position in the whole league. A rare hit in the draft for the Dimitroff era. So he played well, had that big pick early in the first half, really set the tone. And, Falcons defense had, I want to say it was 4, maybe 5 sacks, and they were last in the league coming into the game with only 16 on the season. I think they said there was like 3 or 4 players in the NFL who had more sacks individually than the Falcons did as a team.
Wow,
so to see them be able to generate, yeah, right, man. And then they, came up with 5 this week. So to see them be able to generate pressure that they hadn't been able to do for 15 weeks up until that point
right.
is pretty insane. So, that's why I don't bet on sports, man, because you just never know. The NFL's been crazy this year, man. So many games I thought were shoe-ins went the other way this year. I think maybe more than ever.
Yeah, this year has been crazy. You hit the nail on the head with one of those reasons that the NFL has been crazy is to watch these New Orleans Saints come up with the record that they have. As I had them going into the Super Bowl, you had them as a wild card team, and I'm sure we weren't alone on those predictions, as many analysts probably thought the same. And this is a team that they have the good they have a great coaching staff at that. They have great players, but as you said, maybe it's that age may be catching up to them, and I wouldn't say it's time for them to rebuild necessarily. But they do need to figure out what is wrong and figure it out real quick because I'm puzzled. I don't understand it, man.
Yeah, like you said about the coaching staff, man. I thought Rob Ryan was going to be a huge addition for him. Mm-hmm. I thought he'd shore up that defense, and even in the Saints' best years, that's always been where the question mark has been. But they've had one of the worst defenses in the league this year, and one of the worst defenses all time statistically against the pass. Really the last thing I wanted to touch on about this game, too, is pretty interesting. Saints cornerback Keenan Lewis came out talking smack all week, back and forth, talking about he didn't care if Roddy White played. I think he was quoted as saying, we're definitely going to give them a funeral. He's talking this about he's talking all this junk about a team who lit him up for 500 yards last time they played, back in week 1. So he came out talking smack and, called out Julio Jones, Roddy White by name.
Mm-hmm.
And if you remember back a few weeks ago, Patrick Peterson came out yapping a little bit before the Julio Jones matchup. and Julio went off for over 2 bills that game. So
Right.
I don't know when these guys in the league are going to quit fueling the fire as far as Julio Jones is concerned, but he might be one of those dudes you might want to, not give him any extra motivation.
Oh yeah, man, he definitely has that Megatron like vibe about him where he can't be stopped. So, yeah, I don't know when these cornerbacks are gonna get it, but you gotta respect him. Definitely, and we're talking about Julio Jones here as one of those guys. It's funny that you didn't mention that hasn't talked junk and probably gets it is Richard Sherman, and I would love to see that matchup sometime in the future. Just throwing that out there real quick.
Two freaks out there. I mean, we had that matchup a couple years back, if you remember. The Falcons actually knocked off Seattle in a divisional round. That was really the year before. Obviously it was 2 years ago. So before Seattle made their Super Bowl run, but it was a game I was impressed to see the Falcons win. I mean, that was a tough, top-notch D. And I think Julio got the better of Sherman that day. I think he had a long touchdown catch from what I can recall. He put over 100 yards on him. So one of the few